but she says he once told her that his father died because of black magic. She says she wants to know everything about it. Andy says she absolutely has the right to know everything. He says it's his duty as her husband to tell her everything, but he asks her to promise him something first. He says after learning all of this, toward his family and toward him, her view of them should never change. I want your love for me to stay just as it always has been. The queen reassured him, and he began to recount the events of the past, events that must be known to understand what truly happened. Andy said that before his mother Sri was married, she had two close friends. One was Layla, and the other was Harman. Harman later became his father, meaning his mother had deep feelings for Harman, kept secret within her heart. But his father chose Layla instead. Layla loved Harman deeply, and his mother Sri could not accept that Harman had set her aside to marry Layla. It was something she could not bear. Unable to endure it any longer, his mother turned to black magic. She went to a sorcerer named Zero and used dark sorcery to steal Harman away from Layla. But what remained hidden was darker. Still, Layla had already been pregnant by Harman long before, and she begged Andy's mother not to do this. Not to take Harman from her, but his mother would not listen. Eventually, the villagers drove Layla out of the village because she was pregnant and unmarried. 10 years passed, and Layla returned carrying with her the curse of black magic. She came to take revenge and settle old debts, and she killed his father through dark sorcery. At first, she was on the verge of killing him, his sister, and his mother too, but somehow they all survived. His wife, the queen, asked him, "What happened to Layla after that? How did you manage to survive?" Andy replied, "Layla and Hannum both died. To save ourselves, I set their bodies on fire with my own hands. And that is how I ended both Hannum and Layla." The queen then asked, "Who exactly was Hannum?" Andy said, "The truth is, before my marriage, I was in a relationship with a girl. Her name was Hannum, but I had no idea she was a traitor. And the darkest truth was that she was Layla's daughter, meaning my own half-sister. She had only played with his feelings to gain entry into their home and destroy their family. But he did not let that happen. And after all of that, he began a new life with her." Now, friends, the story Andy told the queen here is the very same story shown in the first part of the series, and it has been summarized clearly and beautifully within this film itself. But what happens now is that on the way back, Andy spotted some hikers in the distant mountains, and it seemed to him that Hannum was among them. Yet the queen could see no one there at all. Fear was quietly creeping into Andy's heart. Meanwhile, we see Dina venturing deep into the forest in search of her grandfather. And there she saw something that shook her to the core. Her grandfather, stripped of his clothes, hacking away at some creature with an axe, cutting it apart without mercy. The sight terrified her, and she accidentally made a sound. Dina realized it was not safe to stay and turned to run, but her grandfather had already seen her. At the same time, his wife was passing by the kitchen and overheard her mother cooking and whispering something in a low voice. Something she kept murmuring. The words were these: "Beneath the full moon's light, the dead souls shall rise again. Beneath the full moon's light, the dead souls shall rise again." When she stepped closer to look, Dina appeared at that very same moment. She had just returned from the forest, and right then, the grandmother pulled something out of the pot. It was Dina's beloved cat. The cat was completely dead, and the old woman said she had cooked it as a meal for everyone. How revolting. When the wife was bathing her elderly mother, she saw the old woman's back covered in countless wounds and scars, strange and deeply unsettling. We then see Dina burying the body of her beloved cat. The moment she finished, she turned around and spotted her grandfather emerging from the forest, carrying something in a bag, and entering that abandoned room. She approached the door, and her grandfather suddenly stepped out to meet her, and he acted as though he had never seen her following him at all. That night, Dina said to her mother, "Mom, doesn't it bother you even a little, the way Grandpa and Grandma have been acting? I find it very strange. Something must be wrong here. Is something bad going to happen to us again, Mom?" Her mother replied, "Don't bring up those old stories again. It's nothing. They've simply grown old. That's all there is to it." Meanwhile, Andy was lying beside the queen when she said to him, "Know that learning about your past has not changed my feelings for you one bit." But when he turned to look at her, it was not the queen's face he saw. It was Hannum's face. He recoiled in shock and turned away, but when he looked again, it was his wife, the queen, yet the haunting image of Hannum kept tormenting him, refusing to leave. It felt terrifyingly real to him, not a hallucination at all. That night, Dina was jolted awake by a sudden sound and stepped outside. A sound was drifting into her ears, and then she heard that same whisper again. Beneath the full moon's light, the dead souls shall rise again. Suddenly, a figure darted past her from behind and vanished into that abandoned room. From inside came the rising sound of chants and dark rituals. She tried to open the door and realized it was locked from the inside. Dina began searching for any gap or crack through which she could see what was happening within. When she found a small opening and peered through, she saw her grandfather bowing before something and performing a strange ritual. Suddenly, the grandfather sensed from inside that someone was watching him, and Dina knew she was running out of time. Just as she turned to leave, her grandfather appeared before her without warning, holding the axe. She cried out, "Grandpa, it's me, your granddaughter Dina." But it did not seem to be her grandfather, or at least not entirely. Something else seemed to inhabit his body. Before he could bring the axe down, she ran with every ounce of strength she had and slammed the house door shut behind her. He pounded the door with terrifying force while she trembled in pure fear. Then the pounding stopped suddenly, and she saw no one outside, but the moment she turned back inside, he was standing right there in front of her. And her grandfather said to her calmly, "Tina, what are you doing here at this hour? Go to sleep." What on earth was happening in this house? No one could say. Meanwhile, Andy and the queen were asleep. When the queen woke, she found the grandmother standing directly before her, slowly drawing near and placing her hand on her stomach. The queen could not move at all, as though her entire body had turned to stone with dread. And in the morning, Dina was telling her mother, "Mom, something must be wrong with the two of them." But the wife still wasn't believing it. Meanwhile, we could see Ronnie telling Andy that she couldn't stay there anymore, that there was something seriously wrong with his grandfather and grandmother. But Andy said he didn't know how they could leave from here, asking if they could really abandon them and go. In other words, nobody was believing Dina or Ronnie. Ronnie then goes and shares the matter with Dina. Meanwhile, a man arrives at the gate of the house, someone who is a member of the local mosque committee. He comes and hands the wife a letter, saying that the mosque hasn't received any payment for 2 months. He asks if the owners of this house have returned. The wife says, "Where would they go?" She says they're old people who always stay right here. But the man says no, he's come by several times, and all the windows were shut, with no one home at all. Now this makes the wife uneasy. She goes to her parents' room, but they aren't there, so the whole house is searched. But her parents can't be found anywhere. So where could they have gone? Dina then says she had seen her grandfather somewhere in the forest, and that they might have gone there. So, following that lead, they all set off to search for them deep in that forest. Once they arrive there, they see something that terrifies them deeply. It's countless goat carcasses lying around, rotting away. Seeing this makes Ronnie want to vomit. Andy asks Dina if their grandfather really did this. Dina says yes, she saw it with her own eyes. But there was one thing in common: not a single goat had its head, which means the heads were being used for some other purpose. While Ronnie is vomiting, she notices a strange man nearby. But the moment Andy arrives, the man disappears from there. After searching the forest all day, when they return home in the evening, they're surprised to see the lights on in the house, which means someone is inside. When they go in, they see their grandfather and grandmother dancing together as a couple. And after putting everyone through all that worry, this is the state they find them in. They themselves are stunned. Of course, their feet were covered in mud. After cleaning them up, they're asked many times where they had actually gone, but they say nothing at all. There, the grandmother holds Ronnie and asks how she's feeling. She says Ronnie must have been through a lot of strain the whole day. She tells her she shouldn't be doing things like this now. She says Ronnie has a baby in her belly now.
She says they need to think about that.
Hearing this, the wife says, "Mother, she doesn't have a baby in her belly."
Her mother says she understands.
The wife then immediately asks Ronnie if she's pregnant. Andy then tells his mother that he was just about to tell her, but it hadn't been the right time. Hearing this, the wife becomes very angry. She reacts very badly to the news. Because of this, we see Ronnie crying. Andy couldn't understand it either. His mother should have been overjoyed about her first grandchild. So, why did she react this way instead? While Andy is washing his face in the bathroom, Hannum suddenly appears behind him. Hannum says it must hurt a lot that his own mother doesn't approve of his child. But he says this pain is nothing, laughing as he says it, before vanishing instantly from there. Coming out of the bathroom, Andy notices that the door to his grandparents' room has suddenly opened. Going inside, he looks through the window and sees light glowing inside that abandoned room outside. Out of curiosity, he goes over there, and since the door is closed, he tries to peek inside through the gap in the wood. And then he sees his grandfather and grandmother both worshiping someone, as if performing some kind of ritual. And in the blink of an eye, he sees them eating the meat of those very goats they had killed in the forest. Suddenly, a small sound escapes from him there. Somehow, he manages to slip away from there. Meanwhile, when the wife wakes up and steps outside, someone suddenly embraces her from behind. And it was no one else. It was her dead husband, Harmon. He kept repeating to her that all of this was happening because of her, that it was her fault, and that she would have to face the consequences of it. Terrified, she calls out to her daughter Dina, who's sleeping beside her. But when the figure sits up, it isn't Dina at all. It was her other friend, Layla, who is also dead. Seeing this leaves her utterly terrified. The next morning, when Dina wakes up, she finds a letter on the table. It read that Dina had an important task to take care of, so she was going out. It said she was taking Andy's car. We see that wherever the wife goes, blood suddenly starts pouring from her nose. Meanwhile, Dina, Andy, and Ronnie are sitting together talking about all of this. Ronnie says she saw a strangely dressed person in the forest. Dina asks what kind of clothing. After hearing the description, Dina realizes this must be the healer, Jero. Ronnie asks if this is the same healer their mother first used to perform the black magic.